SanParks is pursuing public-private partnerships for more than 100 projects. It's aiming to roll out the partnerships over the next 10 years in 14 of its national parks. The partnerships will be focused on accommodation, retail, hospitality and activities, as well as building and infrastructure. To tell us more, I'm joined by SanParks Chairperson Pam Yako. Thank you very much, Pam, for joining us this evening. So before we get started, tell us a little bit more detail about the kinds of opportunities that you're looking for in these private-public partnerships.
Evening, Anley, and your viewers. So, let me start. I'll just give you a little bit about the program itself. So, SanParks has been involved in commercialization as part of its revenue enhancement and increasing the experience of tourists in our parks. You would know that we're primarily an organization that focuses on conservation, which is South Africa's cultural and natural heritage. So that's our primary business. We look after that on your behalf, and so that not just for ourselves, but also for future generations. So there has been increasing pressures on the fiscus. And SanParks has explored PPPs as a way of getting more people to participate, or businesses to participate in our industry or business, and therefore we've set aside 100 opportunities. This time we started with 60 before, and now we're going up to 100, and those include accommodation establishments or lodges. It will include adventure activities. It will include curio shops, things like that, or retail. It will include restaurants and things like spas. So these we've selected quite creatively in the 14 parks that you've mentioned. And we're hoping that we can get partners to either invest and kind of build, operate, and transfer to us, or even manage some of those that are already in our possession.
How do these partnerships also serve the rural communities in and around SanParks areas across the country? Because many of these people living in the communities would also then be employed in these opportunities.
It's an important objective for us as an organization, because we believe that we're one of the key economic actors in some of these rural areas. And in some places, the only employment that people have is inside the park. So it will, on the one hand, create employment opportunities, but that's the multiplier effect of some of these businesses, that they could have also themselves employ others in around our parks. But also for communities that have had land claims, we are also opening up opportunities for them to also, as part of the criteria, to also participate in these PPPs that we've identified.
So existing PPPs have increased the value of SanParks infrastructure assets by 995 million rand. That's quite significant. We know the pressures on businesses today. What is in it for investors? How are you going to support and enable them?
I think and primarily it is to create the opportunities, because I think one of the good things about investing in our parks is that you're basically getting a captured audience. So there is that side of it. But we're not just throwing people in the deep end. We will employ transaction advisors to look at the viability of these projects. So there is, we are looking very much on return on investment for businesses. And on our side, we would like to support as much as possible, primarily by offering the product, because the product on our side is to make sure that if you've got a lodge in our parks, we need to make sure that we look after the game that people would want to come and see.
To some extent, one also wants to empower businesses in a specific area. Do you have any specific mandate to select investors who are from a specific area over and above investors maybe coming from outside the country or from across a different province?
We are governed by the Tourism BEE Charter codes in this regard. Obviously, I think it would, if for example local businesses, it would. I think it will weigh heavily than businesses that come from afar. But obviously, we're going to have to look at issues of value add, experience in the field, or maybe encourage, in some instances, partnerships between the private sector. We can't do it for them. And the private sector must find ways of collaborating in some of these instances, but we encourage it as SanParks.
So these 100 opportunities or projects are set to be implemented over the next 10 years. What's the immediate process for interested investors to follow?
Okay, firstly, you need to get hold of us and tell us you're interested and what you'll be interested in, and we'll provide more information on the site specific, on site specific information. But also, it also depends on what you're interested in, because for things like greenfield projects, like where you basically going to build the lodge from scratch, it will require that, amongst other things, there has to be an environmental impact assessment. And obviously on our side, we're also going to be also advertising some of these opportunities as they get ready. So please get in touch with us so that you're on our database, we're informing you of where the process is, and people are not left behind.
When we started our conversation, you said that conservation, not only of environments, but also of culture and heritage, was one of your primary focuses. So expansion and conservation are not necessarily at loggerheads. Sometimes you need expansion in order for conservation to effectively happen. Tell us how that plays into this project.
Okay, it is, again, in selecting the sites, we kind of look at as part of park management plans, and we look at areas that we kind of zone for these kinds of things. But also when we look at environmental impact, that's why we talk about environmental impact assessments as part of the process that we'll need to undertake, because we can't do one at the expense of the other. And at the same time, we need to find a way that balance where there is an impact. If there's a level where we can mitigate it, and then we'll find solutions in that regard.
Well, thank you very much for your insights and for speaking to us. That was SanParks Chairperson Pam Yako.